So this is going to be the hopefully last time that I say this, but I'm doing my position rankings for, I don't know, probably the fifth or sixth time with the actual hope to finish it out this time. Recording's been difficult. Things have been changing. I said, oh, I'll do it now. And then I waited till, the Senior Bowl. And then I'll do it now. And I waited till the Combine. As of right now, my rankings are finalized. I'm not going to take into account Pro Days too much. So as of right now, these are the finalized rankings. These are how I view these guys, where, who I would take above. Obviously, it differs for each team, right? I mean, if you're a team that's, kind of just a quarterback away, you're not going to be taking a Malik Willis, right? But as far as just pure talent, who I'm taking above the others, let's get into my quarterback rankings as well as special teams at the end of the video. And starting off with my day one quarterbacks, number one for me is going to be Malik Willis. This guy's just shown he's shown very high character. Teams are very interested in him. Like he could legitimately go as high as number two. I don't think the Lions will take him, but it's a very possible chance. But beyond that, I mean, he still struggles and even this year, struggled in things that were an issue, even like a couple years ago. Just as far as like, he's not always the most accurate guy. He doesn't read the defense particularly well. This is definitely a guy that you want to give development time because he's kind of like a Josh Allen, or Trey Lance. Like, you give them some good development, they're going to turn into great quarterbacks. But as of right now, I'm not taking him if I'm Seattle, unless Seattle gets themselves like a Baker or a Jimmy, but I'm not taking him if Seattle. I'm not taking him if I'm Carolina, because I need a quarterback that can play good for me right now, not somebody that I need to develop. And they're gonna throw Malik Willis into the pits, day one. So while this is a guy that I would take above the rest, it's simply because if you give him that proper development time, if you give him a good situation, this guy's going to pretty easily be the best in the class. Strong arm, great mobility, high character, but there's a lot of development needed for Malik Willis. Number two, we got Kenny Pickett. This is kind of the polar opposite, because while Kenny Pickett has nowhere near as high of a ceiling, he has a much higher floor. He's a very safe prospect in my opinion. He brings nice height just compared to the rest of the class. And 6'3" is not short for a quarterback really anymore. And he's pretty mobile as well. Like, he's a pocket passer, but this is definitely a guy that can make plays for you outside of the pocket, which is great to have, obviously. And compared to a Malik Willis, simply just has better accuracy. He reads the defense just much better than a Malik Willis. And this is a team that if I am, Carolina, where you're in a place right now where you can go compete, you just need that quarterback, I'm taking Kenny Pickett over Malik Willis all day, because he can step in and start for me right away. And although there's this, whole thing about his hands, like, being completely honest, if his hands aren't so small, he's probably quarterback one for me, just because he's a safe option, but also has decent upside. Like, he can very well be a top 15 quarterback. That's not out of the question. And that is good enough to win a Super Bowl if you have the team around you. So I'd imagine most cases, Kenny Pickett's probably going to go above Malik Willis, in my opinion, just because he'll be better day one. As far as upside, obviously it's Willis, but Pickett, a safe option. I think he will go higher than people think. I think all the quarterbacks could. Number three, I got Carson Strong. And he's kind of a mix between Willis and Pickett, and not in terms of play style, but rather just the fact that while he's a safer prospect than Willis, he's also not as safe as Pickett. Yet he brings his own things, right? Carson Strong is not immobile. He's just not someone you want outside the pocket. So similar to a Malik Willis, he does need a good situation. I fully believe that he's going to need a good offensive line. He's going to need weapons, because otherwise he's going to really struggle. He can manipulate the pocket just well. I mean, that's what's great about Carson Strong, is while he's not going to give you anything on the ground, he has all the traits you're looking for in a pocket quarterback. He reads the defense well. He has a really strong arm, probably the strongest in the class besides Willis. Accuracy is not a concern at all. I mean, there's really just not many concerns with Strong. He's a safe, not the safest, but he's a safe quarterback for the most part, that at the very worst is going to be a good backup for you. A pocket guy, but he has all the traits you're looking for in a pocket quarterback. So it's kind of tough to determine where he lands, because, a team that takes him, obviously, he's a first-round quarterback. You're taking him to play like a first-rounder. Does he drop to the second round? There's a strong chance, because, the knee injury is sort of concerning, but does it matter all that much if he is such a pocket quarterback? I don't know. So it's kind of tough. I decided to put him here at 3 because I would take him over the other quarterbacks in this class, but I don't think I'm taking him before Pickett or Willis. Number 4, we got Matt Corral out of Ole Miss, and again, a kind of a tough player to rank in this because while I do believe he probably has the highest ceiling besides Willis, at the same time, he has a very low floor. Matt Corral is a boomer bust prospect to me. He's not the biggest guy in the world, and he's, not the best passer. He definitely brings a lot to the ground game. He's not I wouldn't even say he's Kenny Pickett level, like, because Kenny Pickett really is underrated as far as making a play longer. Matt Corral can do that, but he's just it's still tough because the big concern a couple years ago was the fact that he tried to play hero ball so much, and it was basically, if Matt Corral can stop playing hero ball so much, he will be a first-round quarterback pretty easily. And he did. He toned it down. He definitely played a lot smarter. He made a lot better passes, didn't throw as many picks, and still stayed, on a similar production level. But the issue is that some of those core things, it's just as far as accuracy, he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not as good as a strong in terms of manipulating the pocket. He's definitely a developmental guy similar to Willis. Well, I think he might be a bit more, pro ready than Willis. Like, I'd feel much better about taking Corral to start day one than Willis, but I also don't think his ceiling is as high. I see him being, at best a top 20 quarterback, which is not something you can really win a Super Bowl with. For me, he's kind of in that mid day one conversation right now, because I think he's someone that can take that, those mid-tier teams to the playoffs, but I don't know if they're going to do much past that. So it's kind of tough, but I do have him at 4. Then my day 2 quarterbacks, I got 3 of them. I don't have Sam Howell graded as a first rounder, and it's not anything on his part. I think Sam Howell is safer than a Malik Willis or than a Matt Corral. I'd much rather take him if I'm a team that, is, again, that quarterback away. But I don't think he's quite on Pickett or strong levels. He definitely does still have some development needed. He's shown great stuff throughout his time at UNC, but I don't feel like he's progressed all that much. And that's not his fault, because especially last year when he lost Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, Diami Brown, his other wide receiver I can't think of the name of, all he had on that offense was Josh Downs and a very, very inconsistent offensive line with some play calling that doesn't exactly help his case for being, a day one quarterback. Now, Matt Corral, especially, he does, and Malik Willis, they both do a lot of those, simple read options. And that's kind of what Sam Howell specialized at in UNC, just because they didn't run a very, complicated offense because they just had lost so many weapons. However, the fact that he played pretty much on the same level despite losing so much talent, I think does speak to the fact that this is a guy that can play in a worse situation. I think, he's a guy, like I said, he's safer. He needs some development because he can be a top 15 quarterback. That's what the development's for. But I'm not taking him day one because he doesn't have the ceiling of a Corral or a Willis, but he's also not as safe as a Strong or a Pickett. He's right there in the middle, kind of drops him down to day 2 for me. I think a team, mid day 2, probably, maybe top 10 of the second round, will take a shot on him. And he could go first round totally. Like, I could totally see, some teams. I thought the Steelers had a good shot, but then they got Mitch Trubisky, and this guy's kind of just Mitch Trubisky in some aspects. It could definitely be better. It could honestly be worse. So I got him at 5. 6 is going to be Desmond Ridder. Another tough guy to rank because a lot of people really love Ridder, and I totally understand. I, for a while, had him over Corral. He was my 5 over Corral. I've never really had him as a day 1 prospect, and that's just because I don't see a very high ceiling. Again, he's another one of those guys where I think he is a safer prospect than Corral or Willis. I'm not taking him over them because, yeah, sure, he's a safer prospect, but his safety is not the best. Like, at least with a Kenny Pickett or a Carson Strong, I'm relatively certain that at the very least, they're going to be a high-level backup. Desmond Ridder, can still very much be out of the league, right, at his worst. So while he's safer than a Willis or Corral, that doesn't mean he's safe. Whereas with his ceiling, I get it that he has some nice traits. He's a very athletic quarterback, which can go very well for a backup, right? Because I'd prefer my backup to be very mobile, and Ridder is a good athlete. But as a pure passer, I don't see enough, especially with concerns of accuracy, to really say that he's worth a first-round pick. He was able to throw it to Alec Pierce a lot because Alec Pierce was a pretty good athlete that could just kind of go up and get it or outrun his guy, and they weren't exactly the hardest throws. Ritter does have a nice arm, right? That's nothing to. I think the biggest concern, honestly, is just that he's not got the highest ceiling. I think he's at his, near his ceiling, to be honest. Because if he plays like he has in college in the NFL, that's great. I mean, he's probably a starter for some lower end team, but I just don't view that safety necessarily, and the accuracy has been a real concern, and it's never really developed. Sure, they got to the playoffs, but I just don't think he gets much better. So I got him as my 6. And then last we got Bailey Zappi, who I do view as probably more of a third round pick. He had some really great stats at Western Kentucky this year. I think he threw for about 5,500 yards, might have went over 50 touchdowns. Like, he had some incredible counting stats. And I definitely think he's worth a day 2 pick, in my opinion. But is he ever going to be a starter? No. I mean, he's probably going to be one of those guys where, he's drafted to be a backup. Maybe he comes in to play a few games and plays decent in those games, but I just don't think he's going to be much more than that. I'd still take him over a lot of other guys because he has shown that he can get that production and stuff, but it's against, lower end competition for the most part. So Zappi, great numbers guy at college, but I just don't think he turns into that much in the NFL. There's no real major concerns about him. I think his arm is a little overrated because while he can chuck it, like, he has a strong arm, it's not a very accurate deep arm. So, it's just kind of like, I don't think he does anything particularly great. He doesn't do anything particularly bad. He's going to be a backup if he will be drafted, but he's not going to be drafted to be a starter. So I got him as my 7 as a day 2 quarterback. Moving on to day 3, my number 8 is going to be Eric Barriere out of Eastern Washington. A guy that brings a solid ground game. And again, that's kind of where you're at with this stage is you're probably taking most of these guys because they can contribute something just in terms of potentially being a good backup. Chase Garbers, which we'll get to the other guys later, but some of these guys, they can turn into nice backups. Maybe some of them, I feel pretty confident they'll be nice backups. And I think Barriere, probably the best example of who I view as a good backup. He's got an underrated arm. He does have a nice arm, but beyond that, he just, similar to a Bailey Zappi, he doesn't do anything particularly well. He doesn't do anything particularly bad. He brings a solid ground game, and that's what makes him a great day 3 pick to be a good backup. So that's pretty much the end of it for Barriere. Chase Garbers, kind of a different story because while he brings something to the ground game, it's not quite on the level of Garbers or of Barriere. But with Garbers, I think he has that potential to be a good backup in the NFL. But if he is, he's gonna be more of that pocket passer, which is tough because if you're the backup, you're not taking snaps with the first team. And so then you're not really gaining that chemistry, which can be an issue. So I'm not as big of a fan of these types of quarterbacks, except the reason he's going to be over Ellaby, who I do think does have a better ground game, is simply the fact that he has shown a bit more that he is able to still operate an offense for the most part at Cal, can still make those throws. And so I think he could be one of those, pocket passing backups, but I think he could be pretty good at it. Experience as well. Caleb Ellaby, like I said, he's kind of a similar to Eric Barriere, not quite the arm, and again, just doesn't do anything particularly well. I also think he probably has, not as good accuracy and just mechanics as the 2 guys above him. At the very least, he does bring a good ground game, can develop into a solid backup, I think, but just not much more than that. He was solid. He had some good help there at Western Michigan, though, so I don't view him as much more than that. Brock Purdy as my 11. I really wish Brock Purdy would have developed, and it's unfortunate because I really don't think he will at this point, even in the NFL. I get it. He was playing with a very poor offensive line, which didn't help him. But really, more than anything, they were a poor run blocking offensive line, which just goes to show how good Breece Hall is. They weren't a good pass blocking offensive line, but they weren't quite as bad as they were in the run game. So I don't think it's like if you can't perform against pressure in college, you're not going to be able to do it against the NFL. He's more of a pocket passer. He has some, ability outside of the pocket, but he is more of a pocket passer. And like I already said, that's not something I like in general in the NFL, a pocket passing quarterback, but a backup quarterback. But He also just doesn't bring that much on the ground game in general compared to like a Garbers who can bring something to the ground game. He's small for his like he's got a small frame, you know, and like a Barriere, he's a smaller guy, but he's at least got like some ability to take hits and stuff. Birdie just a small guy. Um, yeah, I just don't think he ends up being a backup in the NFL. I think he'll probably be drafted, you know, like round 6, but I don't think he'll end up actually being a backup in the NFL. He is above these other guys though in day 3 simply because it's just I don't see much out of them. Jack Cohn, he got better, you know, kind of in the second half of the season for Notre Dame, but I don't think he really did anything that much impressive. I think he had some good weapons at Notre Dame, you know, very good tight end, very good receiver that I like in Kevin Austin, and a good offensive line. I just don't think he did anything all that spectacular to where, yeah, I'd take him, you know, round 6, round 7, but that's just in the hopes that potentially he can be good enough in training camp to earn a backup spot. I don't think he does. A similar case to Dustin Crum, where, you know, these are both seniors that just haven't done enough to show that they're worth anything more than a late day 3 pick for me. Yeah, really just kind of the similar story where, like, these guys are not particularly great at anything. And I don't think they bring that much to service as a backup in the NFL. The one kind of exception to that at 14 is Akil Glass, who I simply just wish he would have been with a better team. You know, at least like with a guy like Carson Strong, he's able to manipulate the pocket. He has a very strong arm. Like he has the intangibles for a pocket passing quarterback. Akil Glass has some of those intangibles, but he is a strictly a pocket passing quarterback. I mean, the guy's a statue. And that's just the unfortunate part is because while he does have some really nice traits, he just cannot move at all. And in this NFL, if you're going to be a pocket passing quarterback, you have to at least be able to deliver those balls accurate and quick, and you need to be able to manipulate the pocket. Akil Glass just simply can't do that. So yeah, I'd take him probably, you know, like Mr. Unanimous type of guy or Mr. Irrelevant type guy, which is kind of, you know, it's kind of a rude name, but I'd take him. I'm not expecting much at all from him, to be honest. Then my undrafted free agents, you know, these are the guys that I would sign after the draft, but not really be willing to draft them. EJ Perry showed some nice things at Brown University. You know, what I have seen of him, I liked. Like, he showed some nice things. He brings nice mobility. He's got a decent arm. He's got decent accuracy. Like, he's played pretty well just against very poor competition. And it's not something where I'd be really willing to use a draft pick on, where, yeah, I'm fine signing him afterwards. I'm very interested to see that, you know, I think, to be honest, he probably has a better chance of becoming a backup, you know, over probably, you know, the last 5-6 guys, but he's just played against such poor competition where it's kind of tough for me to justify using a pick on him. And then Terry Wilson, similar case. He's shown some really nice things. He has played against higher competition. That's also the reason why he's not played very well at times. Doesn't do anything particularly well. It's kind of a similar story with a lot of these guys, but he just doesn't. He's got a nice arm, but just can't do anything spectacularly. So yeah, I'll sign him afterwards, but I'm not using a draft pick on him. Then my straight up undrafted guys, Cole Kelly out of Southeastern Louisiana. You know, he has shown a few decent things. He's 6'7", you know, and just history shows that 6'7" quarterbacks don't work out in the NFL. Yeah, he's tall. I mean, he delivers nice passes. He's not got the worst arm, but because of that height, he's very immobile. And I don't think he's quite good enough at other things to be, you know, a pocket passing quarterback in the NFL. And like I said, it's just unfortunately 6'7" quarterbacks have a horrible, horrible record. In fact, I don't know if there's ever been a quote good, you know, quarterback over 6'6". So with that involved, like maybe if he was like 6'5" or so, I think he'd be worth a legitimate shot, probably, you know, a 7th round pick or so, but that height is just, sadly, it kills him. 18, Tyler Shuck out of Texas Tech. This is a guy that he has potential. Like, he's really just not shown much. And that's, you know, it's kind of going around now, but it's like, that's what potential means at the end of the day, is you just haven't proven anything. And I think that's the case with Tyler Shuck. I was surprised because I don't think he's returned, which really would make the most sense for him. And maybe he has, right? If he's returned, then great, because that'd be the best option. really doesn't make sense for him to come out. I mean, he's shown nothing in college at Oregon or Texas Tech. Um, yeah, I mean, heck, yeah, there's been quarterbacks in the NFL that did nothing in college. My first thought goes to who's the quarterback? He was on the Lions for a while, and then he was with the Packers. Was it Tim Boyle? It was one of those guys. They had like maybe 100 yards total through their college career, but somehow they're still a backup in the NFL. Like, yeah, there's that shot, and teams might legitimately sign this guy just because he has that potential. Like, he's got nice size, he has certain traits, but he's just not done anything and proven nothing with them. So, for me personally, like, I'm not signing him. I just don't see the point. I'm sure a team probably will end up signing him though, unless he returned, which I hope he did, but I didn't ever see anything that he returned. 19, we got Mackenzie Milton out of Florida State. It takes a very special quarterback to be good. If you're sub 6 foot, Mackenzie Milton's not that good. I don't think he has great mobility like a Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray. Yeah, I just don't think he does anything particularly well. Maybe if he was, again, 6'2", 6'3", I think he has some decent things about him that might warrant signing him after the draft. But when you're not really good at particularly anything, and then you throw in the fact that you're sub 6 foot, I don't see the point really. So unfortunately, I'm just kind of not looking at him at all. And it's a even worse case for Derek King, where yeah, he's shown some nice things, and he's shown more and better things than Mackenzie Milton. You can't play quarterback at 5'8", and that's something where it's like, I don't believe at the end of the day that Kenny Pickett's hands are going to affect him in the NFL. I think a sub 6 foot quarterback can play in the NFL. And Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray are prime examples of that. But like I said, you have to be a special player. Derek King is not a special player. He's put some very, very bad things on tape. You throw in the fact that he's 5'8", he's trying out at receiver at the combine and pro and Senior Bowl and stuff because I'm sorry, you can't be sub 200, sub 6 foot and be 5'8", and then also just not put anything special on there. Yeah, for me, he's kind of the worst quarterback in the class. But that's going to be the quarterbacks. Moving on to the kickers. I do have 2 kickers I think are worth drafting. Number 1 is going to be Cade York. I'd take this guy probably 6th round, maybe 5th round. But he's a very clutch kicker. I mean, he's made some very, very good clutch kicks in his time at LSU. He's got nice size. And he's got good numbers, There's not much more to say about that. He's a good size, accurate, clutch kicker, and I think he's the best in the class. Nick Skiba going to be the number 2. Smaller guy, but also has some very, very good, accurate numbers. He's not quite on the same level. He's not going to make that like game-winning 40 kick that York legitimately can. But Skiba is still a good enough kicker, though, definitely to be taken, like late day 3, 7th round. I think he's still worth it. And we saw this year that kickers are very valuable, especially when they're accurate. The undrafted free agents are going to be Cameron Dicker the kicker at 3. Very close to making my day 3, but not quite. He's not quite as accurate. He's got a strong leg, but it doesn't matter if you're not as accurate. Like, I'd rather take a kicker that's accurate but with a less strong leg over a kicker that has a strong leg but is like less accurate. That's going to change from person to person, but for me, that's just what I'd prefer. But you can certainly switch him and Skiba around. It just kind of depends on what you want. But he is a solid guy with a strong leg. Parker White, kind of more of the mix between the two, and you're kind of seeing that the mixes end up being below just because it's like, well, sure, he's got a strong leg, but it's not quite Dicker. He's accurate, but he's not quite Skiba. But he is a big guy. That's the thing for him, was that he is a big guy that, it doesn't matter that much at the end of the day, but, typically when you're a bigger guy, you got longer legs, which can mean more power. But like I said, not quite the leg of Dicker, not quite the accuracy of Skiba. He's a nice mix in between. I think he's well worth picking up after the draft. Gabe Burkitch, I believe is how you say it. Again, a similar mix where he's got, a strong leg as well. It's not as good as Parker White. He is pretty accurate. He's probably, I'd say he's a bit more accurate. I think the numbers do put him as the 3rd out of these guys. But again, just the leg not being the best in the world, he does go down to 5, but he's on a similar level, still very much worth picking up after the draft, in my opinion. Braden Narverson out of Western Kentucky. You know, it's just kind of from here. It's like you just get worse. I mean, I think he is kind of the last guy I'd feel comfortable picking up because I think he has a decent leg behind him. He's decently accurate. I think he's good enough to be worth signing, but he's kind of definitely a level below the top 5 guys and like 2 levels below, I'd say, York, though. So yeah, worth picking up, just not. I don't expect him to be like a great kicker or anything. Then just those undrafted guys. These are kickers that I would just avoid if I were NFL teams. Charles Campbell, Matt Coughlin, Jake Oldroyd, Connor Culp, all kind of the same things. I mean, it's just the fact that they're not the most accurate, whether through just watching them or through stats, and they don't have the strongest legs. Out of these guys, I'd probably say Matt Coughlin and Connor Culp have the strongest legs, but those guys and Oldroyd are very not accurate. The only one that's close to be worth signing here is Campbell, who does have the best leg out of these guys and is the most accurate, but I still don't think he's good enough to be worth picking up at the end of the day. So these are the guys that I'm just simply not even looking at if I'm in the NFL teams. If you're desperate for a kicker, I guess sure you could, but And then last, moving on to the punters. By the way, if you can hear background noise, sorry for that. I'm trying to get, like I said, I'm trying to get that kind of worked out and stuff. But at number 1, pretty easily, is going to be the punter god himself, Matt Ariza, out of San Diego State. This guy statistically is the greatest punter that college football has ever seen. Beyond that, the dude is a kicker and a punter. I'm drafting him as a punter personally just because he's put up historically great punting numbers, but he can play both, which is pretty great for whatever team takes him. I think he's worth a 4th-round pick. And we've seen punters go higher than that. Well, not punter. Oh, yeah, Brady guy was a 1st-rounder. We've seen punters and kickers go higher than that, but for nowadays, NFL, obviously that is very high. You don't hear of special teams guys going, almost day 2 very often, but Matt Ariza is legitimately worth it. He's just got such a great leg, and he's going to be a fantastic special teams guy in the NFL. The only other guy worth drafting, in my opinion, Jake Camarda, and it is close because I do love Jordan Stout. We'll get to him in a second. But Jake Camarda does just barely come out above Stout, and that's simply just because he's been doing it for longer. He's more experienced. We've seen consistency. Camarda is consistently one of the best punters in college. Numbers are great. He's not a guy that can be like a kicker like Ariza, and he's not historically great like Ariza, but he's a good punter that is worth drafting, in my opinion. The undrafted free agents, though, Jordan Stout, like I said, he was very close to being worth draftable, but I couldn't quite give it him at the end of the day because while he was great, he was great when he played. When he did punt, he averaged a great average, and he punted great at the combine. I believe it was that he punted at combine and Senior Bowl. If he did go to the combine, but Senior Bowl, I know though he made some great punts. I couldn't quite give it to him because he doesn't punt that often. It's only really this year and recently, and even this year it was kind of rare that he did punt for Penn State. He's much more of a kicker, and he's not that great of a kicker, but he is a really good punter. So I can't give him the draftability because he's just not done it enough. But this is definitely a guy that I'm targeting, in free agency after the draft. Like, he's going to be on my radar. Jordan Stout is still a very good punter as long as he keeps it consistent in the NFL, which is not like he's been inconsistent punting. I mean, when he's done, he's been great, like I said, but just doing it more. The rest of the guys I do think are worth signing. Blake Hayes, John Haggerty, Lucas Dean, I think all are worth signing. They've all got pretty good legs. It's just not on the same level as Stout or Camarda, especially not on the level of Ariza. But definitely, if you need a punter, these guys are here, and I would definitely recommend teams that need a punter to pick them up. They're solid. It's tough, right? Because Blake Hayes is a very good punter. I couldn't quite put the other 2 guys above him. And realistically, I'd probably take Lucas Dean over Haggerty, but the numbers kind of support Haggerty a bit more, so it's tough, but I'm going to have Haggerty above Lucas Dean. Either way, those bottom 2 guys are kind of on the same level. You can take either one. Hayes is the pretty clear 4. Stout and Camarda really close there, and Ariza, like I said, punter god for a reason. That guy is pretty damn talented. But that is going to be my quarterback and special team rankings. Running backs are going to be next, so if you don't want to miss those, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Gonna get them out this time. I hope, I swear. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.